Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're glad that all of you could join us for our Salvage Science Summit series, where we are offering a panel discussion to offer an opportunity to discuss pre-recorded webinars with 4 of our specialists highlighting new research regarding salvage logging and post-disturbance logging. We're happy to have our speakers today, Sharon Hood, Morris Johnson, Jonathan Dudley, Joe Wagenbrenner, and Vicky Saab. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. The webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be posted to the Northern Rockies YouTube channel, as well as the Northwest Fire Science Consortium, the Southern Rockies Fire Science Network, and the Rocky Mountain Research Station. And many of our affiliates may link the video as well. Society of American Foresters continuing education credits have been approved. If you're seeking those credits, please click the link on the screen, or it will be posted to chat. And please fill out to the form with the most complete information you have, and we will send the roster to Society of American Foresters, and they will apply credits to your account. Presenters will open up with presenters giving a brief review of their work for about the first 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then the meeting will be open to facilitated discussion by Jessica Bruin. We'll have a 5-minute break at 12:25. Let people do bio breaks and stretch their legs. During the discussion, Jessica will let you know either to unmute yourself or use chat for question and answer. And towards the end of our discussion time, we'll be launching a poll. Please complete our poll. It's very important. We are grant funded, and your feedback directly affects our programming and helps us help you. Links to publications and related items to salvage logging and new research will be posted to chat. And if you're having tech issues, please send a message to Janine Creighton in chat, or janine.creighton@oregonstate.edu. And I will stop share. And Jessica, please welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited to have pulled this together and have an opportunity to share this great science with you and give an opportunity for some panel discussion. So thanks everybody for joining, and thank you to all of the collaborators that have helped to put this on. Between the Southern Rockies Fire Science, Northern Rockies Fire Science, Northwest Fire Science Consortium, and the Rocky Mountain Research Station. So I am Jessica Bruin. I work for the Rocky Mountain Research Station, the headquarters in Fort Collins, Colorado, in science delivery. So with that, yeah, like Gloria said, we are going to give our scientists an opportunity to just give a quick brief overview of their research and introduce themselves, and then we'll open it up for a discussion after that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Vicky Saab and John Dudley first. So John and Vicky, if you want to go ahead and turn on your cameras and unmute yourself.
Hi, I'm just going to try to get some slides up here real quick. Let's see. Just a minute. Okay, sorry about this. Maybe somebody else should go first because I'm having trouble sharing this screen.
Yeah, absolutely, Vicky. No problem. Let's hand it over to Joe Wagenbrenner first. If you would like to hop on, Joe, unmute and turn on your video, and you can share your screen if you'd like to.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Do you see the slide?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
and
perfect.
I see you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great, perfect, thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for the intro, and thank you everyone else for joining our panel discussion today. My name is Joe Wagenbrenner, and I'm a research hydrologist with the Pacific Southwest Research Station, the Forest Service based in Arcata, California. My research focuses on the watershed effects of disturbance and land management, including the effects of fire and post-fire management, which I'm going to talk about today. I'm focused on post-fire salvage logging in my research, so post-fire salvage, but the same processes apply to salvage logging across other disturbances like insect outbreaks or wind throw events, except that the soil properties, the surface cover, and vegetation properties are greatly different in those other disturbance types, so the potential impacts aren't the same. My presentation synthesized several field-based studies that use different methods to measure specific or integrating effects of post-fire salvage logging on soils, runoff, and sediment delivery. And I have a few slides just kind of summarizing the main points of all the data that I previously presented. Here, I'd like to first recognize some of the key partners listed on this title slide who've either led or co-led these studies over the past couple decades. So first, I showed that at small spatial scales, heavy equipment traffic both compacts the soil and reduces water repellency across several types of equipment traffic. Let's see if I can get a pointer here. So we did soil bulk density measurements and we did water repellency measurements and found that the traffic compacts the soil with the soil bulk density and then reduces water repellency. And then we measured infiltration capacity using a dual head infiltrometer and found that all levels of traffic reduced the infiltration capacity of the soil. So the net impact of the two individual measurements was a loss in infiltration capacity, which can lead to greater surface runoff generation. I also showed that skidder and feller buncher traffic can reduce vegetation. That's the green bars in these plots, and also total surface cover. And depending on how it's done, salvage logging can also increase the wood cover, which are the brown bars in these slides, in these figures, because of the slash that's left on the ground. And we measured this increase in wood cover in some studies, but not universally across all the sites. Adding slash is also a possible best management practice that can increase total cover, but it doesn't have an effect on vegetation, at least in the first few years that we measured it. Adding slash, however, may not meet management objectives of the salvage operation because adding wood can also increase fuel loads, and that might not be an acceptable outcome. And then in our runoff experiments, again, all the traffic conditions initially produce more sediment than the untrafficked plots. And this is a compilation of a bunch of data from 3 sites in multiple years and different traffic levels, as a reminder. The differences went away in later years, and we attributed the decreases in erosion from the traffic plots to increases in surface cover. So between this plot here and this plot here, you can see there's no longer an effect across the different disturbance types, and we attribute that to increased surface cover by veg regrowth. And then finally, when we scale up to small watersheds, the total soil disturbance by heavy equipment ranged from about 10% to almost 60% of the area. And some of that's mapped out here in this map on the right. This disturbance did not always lead to increased watershed scale sediment yields. So the spatial arrangement and connectivity of the disturbance plays an important role in how much sediment is delivered to the stream. The location of the disturbance also matters, and adjacent downslope areas of bare soil, regardless of their cause, either from salvage or the fire or some other impact, can lead to greater hill slope to stream connectivity and greater stream sediment delivery. And because of the high variability, there's always some risk of increasing sediment yields as a result of salvage logging, although that can be mitigated. These responses varied with site conditions, including rainfall characteristics, especially the mechanism for storm generation. And then I also mentioned that the local impacts can often be mitigated, and results of these and other studies have informed development of alternative best management practices to help mitigate soil erosion and sediment delivery. So thanks for your attention, and I look forward to our discussion. I'll hand it back to Jessica.
Thanks, Joe. That was you did a nice job of quickly summarizing a lot of work. All right, great. So just in case Vicky needs a little bit more time here, I'm going to call on Morris. Morris, if you'd like to, Johnson, if you'd like to unmute and turn on your video.
Yeah, let's see if this is going to work for me too.
You look good. Looks good so far.
Okay, let's see. Is it working? No.
It looks like it's just coming up. Give it a second. Okay, yep, there is the PowerPoint program. It's not in slideshow view, but we can see it.
Well, at least you can see it because I don't see it. Okay, so is the first slide is up, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Understanding post-fire. Yep.
Okay. So I'm Morris Johnson. I work for the PNW Research Station in Seattle. I'm a research fire scientist. And so my passion is looking at the post-fire logging and field treatments. And I began my freshman year in the Forest Service actually was in National Forest Service system. So I designed a lot of my research program on projects that actually going to help managers on the ground. And so a lot of those projects look at after large wildfires. These fires give us opportunity to do two things. That is, first, that is to see if the wildfires burn through any field treatments. And so I work with managers to basically to quantify if the thinning treatments were effective at changing fire behavior. Here's an example on the Wallow fire in 2013 or 14, I can remember. And we can see that the thinning treatments were effective at changing fire behavior. So we can basically measure the progression as the fire burnt into these thinning treatments. And then a couple of years later on that Apache Separation National Forest, we can also measure, we had a wildfire burning some thinning treatments, and we can see that the fire was the thinning treatment is effective at changing fire behavior. So really what this does is it gives the managers an idea about how effective the thinning treatments were at changing fire behavior. But because of the recent wildfires, the wildfires are really pretty large. And one of the other concerns that they have is not just the thinning treatments, but what do we do after the large wildfires? And so here's the quote that I wrote down on one of who's doing a congressional presentation, and Ann Carson said there are a mix of perspectives on how to manage post-fire landscape. And I was thinking, well, that's a pretty good statement coming from Ann, because within the last 3 years, basically 98% of the Mendocino National Forest has burned. The August complex last year, and then 2 years before that, we had the Mendocino complex. And so basically 98% of the forest has burned. And so you think about these, what you mean about mix of perspectives, really there are two perspectives, and that is either you are for salvage logging or you're against salvage logging. That's basically what it comes down to. So you're basically opponents for salvage logging or proponents. And then in terms of a management perspective, that is, if you're against salvage logging, you're really supporting passive management, right? And if you're for it, you're supporting active management. And so what is the response to your management choice is how those fuels are going, what those fuels are going to look like in the future. And so I've basically been working with the manager to say, okay, well, if we select passive management in terms of fuel loading, what the loadings are going to be in the future. And so we can model that. And so as a consequence, if you select, passive or active management, what are the loadings, how the loadings are going to affect, future fire behavior or future reburn activity. And so really what I've been doing is working with managers during the NEPA process on the IDT team to basically insert a learning objective into the purpose and need. And the idea is if we're going to pursue post-fire management or salvage logging, we should use it as an opportunity to learn from the large wildfires. And so the learning objective in this case is really using a randomized block design. So when we identified, this is on the August complex on the Plastic Keller, we're working on this NEPA process on the NEPA project now. So here are our proposed salvage logging units, where we're proposing to salvage log about 1,000 acres. And what we're going to do is we're going to insert, these cut units within the proposed cut units. And so we're going to have a control, partial salvage, and a full salvage. All the treatment is going to be randomized. We're going to do fixed area plots. We're basically going to count the number of sticks that's on the ground, and we're going to look at the snags. And then, it's not moving. And then we're going to do this before, and we're going to do it after, and then we're going to publish the results. And then that's basically it.
Great, thanks, Morris. That was a really nice overview. Appreciate it. And just so everybody knows, in case you don't see it, there is a chat option at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and you just hover over it and click on it, and there's lots of great links being put into the chat at this point. So at this point, I'd like to give Vicky another chance. Vicky, you want to try again? And John Dudley, just do a quick intro. You're muted right now.
Whoops. For some reason, I'm not getting that option to share it. Maybe John could share his screen.
Let's see, John, you can go ahead and unmute and turn on your video if you haven't already, and give it a shot if you'd like.
You both should have access to the screen share.
Okay. Now I was looking, I think, in the wrong place. Let me try it one more time.
Thanks everybody for your patience, and yeah, feel free to check out the links that are being posted in the chat. There's some really great stuff that we'd like to share with you today. In addition, John, if you'd like, you can start introducing yourself while Vicky's trying to pull up the screen.
Sure. Everybody hear me okay?
Vicky, yep. John, we can see you and we can hear you, and Vicky,
Okay.
you can start to see your screen. So go for it, John. And then
Okay,
we'll turn it over to
great.
Vicky.
Well, my name's John Dudley. I'm an ecologist with the Rocky Mountain Research Station at the Aquatic Sciences Laboratory in Boise, Idaho. And I'm also part of Rocky Mountain Research Station's Wildlife and Terrestrial Ecosystems program. And so in my position, I wear many different hats, but my primary role is to lead and oversee our field research projects in coordination with our many national forest partners and local collaborators, like say, for example, the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program partners. And then I also maintain our research databases and the GIS toolset that we're going to, hopefully get a chance to speak about here.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Vicky, we can see your screen. It is in presenter mode, but if you'd like to go ahead and just introduce yourself and do a quick overview, that'd be great.
Are you seeing notes or just?
Yes, go up to display settings at the top. click on the display settings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you can change it there. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, I apologize for those delays. Let's see here. So I'm Vicky Saab. I'm a research wildlife biologist with Rocky Mountain Research Station, and I'm a member of the Wildlife and Terrestrial Ecosystems Group located in Bozeman. I've been studying woodpeckers and songbirds in relation to wildfires, prescribed fires, beetle outbreaks, and salvage logging since the mid-1990s. Our research has focused on bird populations and their habitats in dry mixed conifer forests of the interior West. And we've emphasized applied ecology in our research with the intention of providing research results to help answer complex management questions. For example, the focus of our tool and of this webinar was a question that we're trying to answer is how can post-fire salvage logging be designed for economic benefits while maintaining habitat for woodpeckers that specialize on recently burned forests? So all of our research has required a big team of many people, including grad students, postdocs, and field crews. And John has co-led with me on all this research. So our webinar presented the GIS tool Firebird, and it's used to apply wildlife habitat models for informing forest management with an emphasis on post-fire salvage. The goal of Firebird is to map habitat for species of conservation concern to help required environmental analyses for land management actions. So forest managers are challenged with implementing post-fire salvage projects while trying to meet the requirements of existing laws and planning documents to maintain wildlife habitat. Litigation over uncertainty of the effects on wildlife species has impeded the implementation of salvage logging, as well as stopped forest restoration activities. So the tool is intended to inform post-fire, post-beetle outbreak, and dry forest management planning. And that will minimize negative consequences to woodpecker species and help meet habitat conservation objectives. So from the Firebird website, you can access the GIS tool, the general technical report, and the instructional Vimeo tutorial. So we're hoping you had an opportunity to view the recorded video, and we look forward to a discussion on Firebird and to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. I appreciate that. And let's turn it over to Sharon Hood.
Okay. Morning, everyone, or afternoon. Let's see. Okay, can you see the main presentation view?
Yes, and you could go up to display settings also and just switch it.
Yeah.
If you want to turn off the notes section.
It's just showing the wrong.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, so my name is Sharon Hood. I'm a research ecologist with the Rocky Mountain Research Station at the Fire Lab in Missoula. My research focuses a lot on looking at tree mortality after fire, fire and bark beetle interactions, and a lot about fire effects and kind of long-term fire ecology after fuel treatments and silvicultural treatments. So the presentation I gave was focusing on predicting tree death after salvage decisions, but I just also want to say that while that talk focuses on salvage, and that's today's focus, a lot of the same data that we have collected goes into also using for developing prescribed fire burn plans and making sure you're meeting objectives around prescribed fire too. So it's not just post-fire management. So in the talk, just we're really, when we're talking about fire salvage, my work is really helping to determine which trees are going to die after fire. So in this picture, that blackened area, that's really obvious. All those trees are dead, but there's a lot more uncertainty around the trees in the foreground and both also in the area on the upper slopes where fire burned through the area, but some of the crowns are still green. And there's managers often need to know what kind of levels of mortality they might see in the first few years after the fire for a variety of different decisions. So here's another example of where people are just wondering which trees are going to survive after the fire. To do that, well, the reason why we do it is we're trying to develop models to be able to provide consistent thresholds for determining if a tree is live or dead, and really to come up with a consistent definition of is this tree going to die within 3 years of the fire? So 3 isn't a magic number. It's just one that we, most of the data that is collected is those trees are tracked for at least 3 years. And we develop these models based on tree species and diameter. And then it's not always the same, but the vast majority of cases use some sort of crown condition like crown scorch or crown kill, and some bark char, and then also the presence or absence of beetles. And so over time, and with the help of tons and tons of people, there have been a lot of studies and data that has been collected since the late 80s. And we recently pooled all the data that we could get our hands on to develop a consistent database so that all the data have the same variables, and this it's available for download on the Research Data Archive for people to be able to have access to just a wealth of data about which tree injury levels and if those trees live or die in the years after fire. So this just came on board last year, and it's gonna allow more testing of the models and development of new models. And so when I talk about the models, it really boils down to, again, those fire injuries and the tree size and species getting a predicted probability of mortality. And these models are embedded in our fire and fuels extension of the forest vegetation simulator, Behave Plus, and in FOFM, the first order fire effects model. So all those software systems are, again, freely available for download and widely used in forest management. And they're also being used with those models. We've been able to develop some regional salvage guidelines. Again, the idea behind this is that people have access to the most recent available science, and that regions are making using the same information and and provide some consistency within a region. So we just finished this for Region 6. It's kind of this document and the link here, but it's kind of in the final stages of editing before being formally published. And we've also done similar work in the northern region and the Pacific Southwest region. And I think that's, so yeah, just kind of big take home messages from my talk was that, these regional guidelines provide consistent standards, but they also provide a lot of flexibility. So acknowledging that projects, there's a lot of different considerations that go into each project. So you can't really make a one size fits all. So trying to build flexibility into these guidelines. And then just these mortality models are embedded into many fire decision support systems, and both for prescribed fire and post-fire management applications. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Sharon. That was a nice overview. And I really enjoyed all of your videos, so I hope everybody did get an opportunity to view them. And if not, please do afterwards also. They'll still be up on YouTube. And I will eventually be putting them up on Rocky Mountain Research Station's Vimeo platform also. So with that, I would like to invite all the panelists, all the scientists to turn their cameras back on. And I would like to invite the participants to feel free to put some questions in the chat if you'd like. Also, I believe there should be a hand raise function on the bottom. We did originally, we're thinking about kind of giving people a break, but I think at this point, just to stay on time here, we'll just continue to move forward. And we know most of you are probably at home, so you can take a break whenever you want. So with that, let's see. Let's see. There is a question in the chat. It says, do other panelists have examples of how their research results have been used to improve post-fire management practices? I don't know if anybody has some direct examples of that. I know, Morris, you work really closely with the forest and the ID teams, it seems like, and with leadership as far as making decisions along with specialists on the ground. And Sharon, I know that just came out as far as for, hazard trees, but have you heard back yet from anybody using it? Or integrating it yet, or do you see that happening more kind of this summer as we're gearing up for?
My understanding, and Region 6 and Robin would probably know this well, but it's certainly already being widely used, and by other agencies outside of the Forest Service. The fires last year in Oregon, there were so many along highways and different roads. So Oregon Department of Transportation is using that in conjunction with, we work to kind of combine the marking guidelines with hazard tree guidelines to be able to make some quick decisions about which trees might be likely to fall along roadsides and high and kind of high traffic areas. So that is one way, because all this research had been done, we were able to, I think different agencies were able to move forward pretty quickly with making those decisions.
Yeah, I'm on the IDT team on the Umpqua National Forest, and we've had discussions about using our publication, and also in Region 5 on the Mendocino, and I think the Shasta Trinity also brought it up because we know that that's a touchy subject in terms of if the tree is going to make it, if it's not going to make it, and what's the best science. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Morris, I knew you looked familiar. I used to work on the Umpqua. Maybe that's why you look familiar. That's a great point. And I'm sorry, Robin, I think I cut your question off. on my chat. The beginning of that question was, as land managers, we often hear the research presented today as reasons that salvage logging is bad and should not be done. And Joe and Vicky show how their research has been used to improve post-fire management practices. And so that's where that question came from. Thank you, Robin, for that. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add to that. In the meantime, Joe, did you have something, or will you just turn? Okay. Let's see if there's any other questions in here.
I saw one. I'll just stick it in there.
It.
It's have there been any studies where the watershed is largely high intensity fire and the watershed surrounds a community, and how this affects salvage plans where the community, which had a 200+ home destroyed, to make the next fire controllable, to protect the community in the future, and how changes in forest treatments to improve the next fires affects the community? Anybody want to tackle that?
So essentially, it seems like, George is asking about, really that WUI interaction where there's been high intensity fire, where watersheds surround the community, and how this affects the salvage plans. I know that that happens frequently in Oregon, where, as far as taking into consideration the flooding, the hydrological factors of what salvage can bring to a community. I don't know that we do have a lot of researchers that do study WUI interaction. I don't know if anybody has any response to that, but
I've got a brief one, but I think you just started on it, Jessica. So I think I'm not. I don't think any of us are social scientists, which is kind of the question, the realm that we're getting at here. And I did work, some of the data I presented was from the Valley Fire, which burned around Middletown, California. I think George is probably referring to the campfire up near Paradise, but and they did, so the project I did was on state land and a small piece of the Valley Fire. So it was a pretty small section. I wasn't involved in the state's decisions or decision process to implement the salvage. I got involved sort of as an observer of the effects of the salvage, not so much the process to get to that point. So I guess I don't know. It's a good question. It certainly, with today's fire regimes, I think it's going to be a much more important question. And certainly, if there's salvage effects that we need to be careful of for communities, then that's something that certainly deserves some attention. But I don't know of anybody actually working on that. Maybe some of the others do.
Yeah, that's a great point, Joe. I know in my experience, just as far as the BLM goes, a lot of those the cross between BLM has a tendency to be closer to the communities, like the land base, so they deal with it quite a bit. Working in partnership with private timber companies to work through salvage logging after fires. So thank you, Joe. There's a question from Alan Gallimore. What crosswalk of research and predictive models occurred between the Firebird app and the hazard tree research regarding likelihood of bird use of snags that may also be targeted for removal? So I think
we actually haven't crosswalked with Sharon's models, but it's a great idea. And so we do have use of trees well, the woodpeckers, several species will use the partially live trees. So, and the ones that are slated to die. So both of those are really important for many woodpecker species, but we have not crosswalked, and I would really like to do that with Sharon's models.
Yeah, that's a good idea and something that I think is totally doable. We probably have all the data to do that now. And I would say, like, in most salvage areas that I have sales that I've been on, and not necessarily hazard tree removal salvage, where you're really trying to mitigate any chance that a tree is going to fall and either injure or kill someone, or cause damage to some infrastructure. But a lot of salvage sales outside of those hazard reduction areas are, there's still a lot of dead trees can get left, but I don't know if it's enough to where it's impacting the bird communities, and that's where it would be good to tie in with Vicky's research.
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably the biggest challenge is, there are these ID teams that, all these specialists that hopefully, the soil scientist is using Joe's research, and the forester is using yours, and and then the wildlife biologist is using Vicky's, and then coming together and having that conversation, because it varies so much, right, from where you are and what it looks like. So Gloria asked a great question. She said she'd be interested in hearing from all the panelists about their thoughts on the most successful methods used to get research and tools into the hands of managers. What are some of the challenges? Does anybody feel like
I
go
could
for it, Sharon.
take a first stab, but I guess
Morris gets to go because he's laughing.
Well, so I think one of the first, this isn't necessarily the most useful in some ways to managers, but I think one of the most important first steps is getting your study and peer-reviewed literature to have that that's the gold standard for people to be able to cite and NEPA projects and use, but then really taking it a step further once that publication is out there for citing, but to develop some and more tech transfer things. And to me, my impression is it's like almost the more the better. People absorb results in a variety of formats. Some people like these webinars, some people like just something they can read real quickly, trying to keep our websites updated. So it's challenging and it takes a lot of time, but it seems like it's most successful when you can kind of do that kind of shotgun approach of several different tech transfer products after you've come out with your peer-reviewed publication.
Yeah, agreed. We've done some different, a lot of a successful, we're finding is like providing like almost like a science you can use, like field guide, to something that somebody can take out with them into the field, in their hands when they're working bare or whatever, and just to have those like BMPs right in front of them, like just that kind of quick walkway. So does anybody else have anything else to add to that, or should I go to the next?
Yeah, I would add to that. We follow the model that Sharon described, and it's taken us years to develop the tool. But one of the things that we did was before it went live, we had biologists at the district and the forest and the regional offices test our tool, and then we improved upon it based on their feedback.
That's great. That's great to hear, Vicky. Morris, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I go. Yeah, I was trying to find that question, but I think probably the best approach is, is the approach that I'm doing, and that is the co-production way, and that is, basically get in with the managers and show them that you are interested in helping them to develop the science, and you're gonna have some success, and sometimes you're not going to be successful. But I think that's the only way you can do it, and this way they you develop that relationship between the managers and the scientists. So in the future, when there is an issue, they would call you, and I don't have to call them. And so it's a lot of work, because I start in October every year, and I'm calling everyone who has had a fire, basically say, okay, what do you want to do? Are you going to do salvage logging, or are you not going to do salvage logging? And so I have this laundry list, and I just do that every couple of weeks, basically trying to find out what are they going to do. And so that's what you have to do in order to develop those relationships. And so in the end, hopefully I won't have to do this in 3 years. They will call me, and instead of me calling them. So.
Yeah, absolutely, Morris. I know that we work a lot with science partner programs in Region 4, and it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of putting yourself out there. So thank you for doing that. And there is a question from, I'm trying to see the full name, Stephen, maybe. It says, I have a question for Joe. I can ask it verbally. So
yeah, this is Steve Fitzgerald from OSU. Joe, a question regarding logging systems and compaction. I was wondering, it's a given whether it's burned or unburned, you have compaction on the extraction corridor. What I'm more concerned about is the compaction that occurs between the corridors. And I was wondering what systems, one, how much control there was on machines to keep them on trails, or how much allowance was allowed for them to go off trail. And two, in what you looked at, what systems probably or methodology created probably more compaction than others?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. The first question is, we didn't really control, we didn't have control over the equipment as part of our experiment. We kind of relied on the what we would like to consider normal operations for the different sites. So the loggers would follow the guidance provided by the land manager, or as interpreted by the logger. So they would typically run, main corridors of skidding where there's, sort of higher traffic areas with many passes, would branch off into smaller corridors where they would actually go and collect the logs for the skidding operation. And then in between those main corridors, when there was equipment felling, so by feller bunchers, there was some single pass traffic between those, but it wasn't sort of consistently across the whole hill slope, if that makes sense. It was, you could still see the tracks where the feller bunchers went, and you could see that it was a single pass of a vehicle or single round trip. So all of those things did cause compaction, and we measured impacts of compaction across all the different traffic levels. It was worse with more traffic, so the more passes was worse, but even with a single pass or single round trip of a feller buncher, there was compaction, there was a change in water repellency, there was a change in infiltration capacity, and there's some uptick in sediment delivery from those different conditions also. Yeah, I think that was most of your question. There's a second part, but I think I maybe hit a little bit there.
No, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah.
Just the other question I had was, just because this discussion comes up, is how long have you seen hydrophobicity last to the degree that you measured it? And I know that can vary quite a bit by soil type, but in your experience,
sure,
where you've measured it.
Yeah, we've usually, and it does vary, of course, depending on the soil type and the burn severity. The most extreme case I think I saw was in Idaho, where we measured it relatively strong water repellency or hydrophobicity 5 years after the fire. And this wasn't in a log site, it was a burnt only condition. At the studies here that I presented in the presentation I recorded, there was some water repellency after 2 to 3 years, but typically it was already starting to dissipate by then, even in the unlogged condition. I can't think of the longest I've seen in literature. It's probably longer than 5 years, but I don't remember. Like in Australia, sometimes they have they call it extreme. So they have a different classification system and they go up a class. So it could potentially go longer there. Sure.
Thanks, Joe. And I would ask the presenters too to kind of scan through the chat too, just because there's some really great comments too. Corrine, Francis, just provided.
Could I just speak real quick? I wanted to say something about
absolutely
the previous question and sort of my experience, because, and with Vicky, there was a question about what are some of the challenges, and I believe that they all roll around communication in all its various forms. And people did talk about, from the rigorous science perspective where we have to start. But I do think we've gained, I don't know that there's not been a time where we didn't go out and meet with the collaborative groups that are part of the National Forest. Seems to be more now, that we personally didn't benefit from research. And I think that the managers would also probably say that they benefited. And I know there's a few of those folks that are watching today. It might be good if they felt comfortable to say that, yes, that they've also benefited when, researchers showed up and were part of these collaborative groups, because then, it could help support, or at least it gives that opportunity for communication that otherwise we don't really get a chance to, participate in.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. I know that all of our researchers want to be as interactive as possible with the land managers on the ground. So it's great to hear when it happens. Let's see, just scrolling through the chat here.
Jessica, we have June Galloway with her hand raised.
Oh, sure, go ahead, June. Thank you, Shannon. June, you're more than welcome to. Oh, no, that's okay.
I'm trying to unmute. I was clicking on everything but the microphone. I just wanted to follow up on John's comment. I'm sorry. And my dog's decided that he is going to start barking right now. I just wanted to follow up on John's comment and just say, I'm sorry. Just 1 second. Sorry. No deer allowed in the yard. So it has benefited. I'm on a detail in Region 1 right now, but I'm normally on the Payette Region 4 and work a lot with John and Vicky. And I know that it's benefited us greatly to have the researchers present, have them participate in field trips and just talk about some of the work they're doing, particularly with our CFLRP landscapes. So it's been very helpful. And we've actually had folks request it on several occasions from different sources, including our Forest Coalition group. Apologies for my dog.
No, that's okay. Thank you. We all experienced that at some point past year, probably. Does anybody have anything to say to that, or? So I have a question for Vicky and John. What if you want to use Firebird in a forest that's not dominant or co-dominant ponderosa?
Well, I'd say it's most appropriate to use for ponderosa or longleaf pine for us. However, we've, in California, we've developed some models that were in mixed conifer that were co-dominant, and in Oregon as well. So if you use it for forests in lower elevation, dry forest, then it's applicable. It's not applicable to mid-elevation, more moist forests, because all of our models were based on data collected in those lower elevation, dry, mixed conifer. John, do you have something to add?
Well, I think we often also say that we would like feedback on if managers do apply the model into landscapes that aren't dominated or co-dominated by ponderosa pine, just so that we can learn sort of from a validation standpoint of how well they may have performed. And then also just remember that the models are really designed to provide, you know, coarse scale planning and not the fine scale prescriptions. We do have summary data from our publications that can be used to help inform that, but the GIS tool per se is not, you know, shouldn't be really applied at that fine scale landscape.
Gotcha. Thank you for clarifying that. And if you, if I missed you in the chat, then feel free to raise your hand too and ask these guys directly. But I guess I have a question for Sharon and Joe, or maybe all of you, really. You know, I know I've become very familiar with the amount of time that you put into, you know, your research and building these models and building these tools. And I just wonder what your thoughts are as far as, like, it seems like everything is evolving so quickly these days, right? Like I feel like that with these high fire severity, you know, larger scale, higher intensity fires, that it almost feels like, if I was in your shoes, that it would be kind of overwhelming to think about how fast, like, your science is going to have to keep up, you know, with the changing environment. And I don't know if it's causing you anxiety too, but maybe it's just because I'm in Colorado now and we had some of the biggest fires last year. But I just think about, you know, you're putting out these great, like, BMPs and, you know, and I'm sure that, like, you know, your document, Sharon, is going to be huge as for Region 6, just dealing with hazard trees in general, you know, post-fire, or just hazard trees in general. You know, so I just kind of wonder what your thoughts are as far as, like, you know, you just finished this paper or this model or this tool, and are you just kind of like going right back out there and looking at it all over again because, you know, everything looks different this year than it did last year?
Yeah, no, we certainly have, you know, that's some of the limitations of empirical data, where you're going out and you're just, you know, you're collecting, you know, information on what we can easily observe from the tree, like about crown scourge or bark char, and putting it into these models. I guess one of the thoughts behind trying to pool as much of the tree mortality and fire injury data as we could find into one database is to be able to see one, kind of the temporal depth that we have in the data across different geographic areas and species. And then what we're doing now with all those fires is being able to, is quantifying the climatic water deficit at the time of those fires. And since we have a bigger sample size, being able to say, or really investigate if climate and mostly drought stress, either at the few years leading up to the fire or after the fire, increased or basically affected mortality relative to just the fire injuries. So that's kind of where we're going now, and seeing with your question of, as climate is changing and becoming hotter and drier, if these trees are more stressed and a fire occurs, would we think that mortality could be elevated given the same level of crown scorch? So that's what we're doing. And then there's also a lot of work moving to try to better understand mechanistically what's going on, so that we're not reliant on old data, data that might be not, it might make it harder to predict the outcome, in a novel climate. But it's a lot of ongoing research. I guess, as soon as you finish one research project, that it raises a lot more questions than it answers. So on to the next.
Job security. Does anybody else?
I'll add something there. I guess I'm not so concerned about the salvage related impacts with the larger fires. I think for the watershed effects aspects anyway, the impacts are, for the most part, are controlled by the machines and the traffic that we use to extract the timber. Starting to understand some nuance there, that's not always just the case, but the technology for the machines isn't going to change that much over the next few years, and we can sort of keep up with that. And we already know that all machines are essentially equal, even as far as compaction goes, despite their different weights and tires versus tracks and all that other stuff. But I think from a water quality and watershed sort of recovery perspective, I am fairly concerned. So as we get larger fires, for example, we're more likely to have a whole watershed burned at a higher severity than you would with these, more historic size patchier fires that, maybe just burned a part of your main watershed, where now it can be the whole drainage. I've seen some imagery of in the Oregon fires from last year, where it's almost whole watersheds and water supplies for communities downstream. So those impacts and recovery from that are likely to take longer, and they're going to be higher impacts because there's less chance for dilution. I guess that's one way to think about it: dilution in unburnt conditions downstream of the burned area. And the other piece of that is we're more likely to burn into the more intense WUI also. So not only is our fires getting larger, we're living more in the interface where fires occur, and there's more likely to have things like burned homes and cars and trailers and all that stuff that adds to the water quality aspect. So I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but I thought I'd drift off there.
Looks like Morris said something.
No.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Let's see. Allison Dean asks Joe, are there lesser impacts from extraction over snow cover?
That's a good question. I think there's not much data about that, at least in Western forests. And I don't know any studies that have looked at salvaging over snow, the impacts of salvaging over snow. And in unburnt systems, that's certainly true if the snowpack is deep enough. And in other parts of the country, like the upper Midwest, that's their harvest season is in the winter, when either the soil is frozen or there's a deep enough snowpack that there's less impact on the soils that are a little bit more sensitive because they're wet typically. That's a good question. I don't, maybe somebody else knows of some winter salvage in the Western US, but I think they typically just do it in the drier period. But I'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, I think I would think that would be hard to study, just in the sense of, you can only be so steep to be doing stuff in the snow.
Yeah. Skidding's a whole new phrase, right?
Right.
But,
put some skis on the bottom of it.
Yeah.
Gloria had a question for the group.
Yeah, hi. This has been really interesting, and anybody in the group in the attendees that didn't get a chance to watch the pre-recorded webinars, please be sure to go on Northern Rockies Fire Science Network's YouTube channel and watch and subscribe and feel free to send the panelists questions about their research. We decided to do this this way to give people a lot more flexibility and really highlight a lot of this interesting research and kind of pull it together, since salvage logging will continue to be a significant part of land management. My question for the group, as well as the panelists, is what ways, and we've identified a few ways by co-production of science, making sure that you have an idea and you start talking about your idea with the managers right out of the gate, and then have field trips based on your research. What ways can the fire science exchanges continue to support this kind of exchange and make sure that the people who need it are getting the answers and the tools in their hands? What kind of feedback would you have for the fire science exchanges while we have a captive audience? What more would the panelists like to see from the fire science exchanges to support this exchange? Do I get to play the Jeopardy melody now?
I mean, I'll just chime in. I think, I mean, the most accessible thing from the exchanges is the webinars, this sort of format, you know, the digital format. But the I usually get the most interacting with managers and leading to co-produced research questions and projects from field trips and actually in person on the ground, you know, looking at a specific site. And I know those happen sometimes, or they did pre-COVID. Hopefully they'll return. I don't know if there's a way to encourage those or enhance that aspect.
I agree with Joe. I've had a lot of good experiences with it's the Northern Rockies Fire Science Network on field trips. And just that's when you can just have an opportunity for lots of dialogue with different managers, different you know, specialties, and that's always really effective.
So webinars and field trips continue to be the most resourceful. Morris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the webinars. I was trying to think of something else, but yeah, I think it's probably the webinars and hosting. Like I like the link about the hot button topics. So that is a good link to have. I actually sent it out to a couple of the IDT teams that I'm working with. So if you can keep that updated, you know, that'd be nice.
Okay, great feedback.
I would just add involvement with the collaborative forest landscape restoration programs. I actually don't know what your involvement is, but I would encourage that. And co-sponsoring field trips with the collaboratives.
Yeah, that's great feedback. We have a couple of those in Colorado and similar organizations in other states. So that's, and which they put on a lot of their own field trips to highlight what they're doing, but more could be done for sure.
Yeah, I would offer that I think we've all learned that the value of webinars over the last year or so, and that we are finding that we can still at least maybe clunky, but it's communication nonetheless that we need to have. And so you just have to kind of keep trying, and maybe it's the realization that you need it's a different topic that's like, for example, something that's information gathering for science or for fire research, and we just want to hear from the managers and have an opportunity for managers to just tell us what are their pressure points, or what's what's needed for them so that we can listen, and then maybe have another one where we, there's some response or something, or an opportunity for dialogue or breakout groups or something, but could be done possibly from a web format where, 16 months ago or whatever, we wouldn't have been probably considering something like that, but now we're doing it, and dogs and kids and cars and everything else in the background, is not phasing us, so we're still able to do it.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. It's definitely a good point. I think everybody will be running into the woods as soon as they're able to, but it has been successful in a lot of ways. So yeah, I think that more of this, and we've seen a lot of success just with when we hear case studies, like that follow-up of the real connection and the application on the ground, the stories, the 3-minute video clips out when you're out in the woods, showing a little piece of your research, is a really great way to connect with people too. I know as far as science delivery goes for the station, we are trying to make better connections with the fire consortiums, and really just bringing us together to work together instead of staying in silos. So we are always open to suggestions, which at this point, Corey did put the YouTube page back up there in the chat in case you missed the videos. You can click on those. I will, Shannon put up a reminder that if you're looking for an SAF credit, you can do that. There is a poll that Gloria is going to put up here in a second, and we really would appreciate your feedback. This is the first of our series as working together to get this science out there. We're hoping that it grows from here, and we really appreciate your participation today as presenters and as attendees. So Gloria just put up that poll, if you wouldn't mind filling that really quick. And we are getting too close to the end of our time here. So if you have any last minute questions, please feel free to unmute, turn on your video, throw something in the chat. And if not, then like we said, these recordings will be available so that you can share with your colleagues. And next time we send out an invitation for these, we always encourage you to forward these. Yeah, and I guess I just want to say thanks very much to all our panelists. You guys are great. Thanks for the presentations. Thanks for taking the time.
While we're waiting for people to finish the poll, and thank you for such wonderful results, would anybody like to say something about the most important thing that they would like to do next about their research? What is the one thing that you want to really work on about the research that you just finished, about the Firebird tool, or is that tree dead, or your other research? We have till 2:30.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
That might be interesting discussion to hear what you'd really like to do next.
I would like to add that for the Firebird tool, we're working on incorporating LiDAR information so that we have more fine scale data. And once, like John mentioned earlier, right now, Firebird tool is a coarse scale meant to identify locations that are highly suitable for nesting woodpeckers. Once we add fine scale data from LiDAR classification on tree densities, on tree diameters, possibly tree species, then we'll be able to incorporate fine scale data into the tool, which will help with silvicultural prescriptions. So that's one of the things that we're trying to do right now, and then also develop habitat suitability models for post beetle outbreak for us. Thanks for asking that question.
That's very interesting. It'd be great. LiDAR is having so many new uses for forest management. That would be really interesting to see the results of that.
And I've got a pretty big project where we're going back to many of these fires from anywhere from 8 to 20 years ago, where we have that tree level post fire or tree level fire injury data recorded. And then we're going back to those now and looking at longer term responses. So what trees have since died, how competition has changed some of the vegetation response, and we're coring the trees and looking at how the fire and fire injury level interacts with how the fire changes competition around the surviving trees, to look at long-term tree growth, to get some idea of these longer term effects that fires are having.
That's really cool. I like the option to go back 20 years later. That's a
yeah, it's pretty fun
awesome
seeing
data
these,
set. Yeah.
and how much they've changed after we were last there 4 years. So
I do have some stuff I'm working on. And thanks for the question, Gloria. It's as if somebody fed you that question from the panel. I'm gonna, if I have a second, I'd like to share a slide that I didn't have, that somehow I couldn't fit into my 40-minute presentation. That'd be okay?
That's fine, Joe.
Okay, so I mentioned best management practices for skid trails and salvage, and we are actually, we did a runoff experiment in the Valley Fire site, and this picture shows some of the different treatments we put out or developed and tested in the field. So this is pretty exciting. So we know adding slash changes the runoff and sediment response, but we found that even this little bit of slash at the outlet of the water bars, which concentrate the water. So let's see if I can show it with a better pointer here. So in this bottom left picture, this water is coming down the hill from the left, and it hits this water bar, and then it goes off towards where everybody's huddled. And that little bit of slash or wood packed into the outlet of the water bar was enough to pretty substantially reduce the sediment delivery. So we're pretty excited about this, and could be a pretty easy implementation as far as operationally and having an impact on reducing effects. So that's kind of what I'm excited about, the next chunk. That's been on my desk for a little while to finish up, but looking forward to doing that soon.
Thanks, Joe. Morris, is there anything you're excited about in the future?
We have a question from Sharon.
Oh,
in the chat.
There you go. Yeah, Sharon, it says, when tree mortality occurs more than 3 to 5 years post-fire, how sure can we be that its demise is from the fire and not other or compounding causes?
So obviously the longer we go post-fire, there's a lot of other things, we would expect some trees to just die even if the fire hasn't occurred. So that's why the mortality models generally stick to 3 years post-fire. So this new research I was talking about, where we're trying to, if we find a tree that's died since our last remeasurement in that first 5-year time frame, we try to attribute it to see if there's bark beetle galleries or something. Sometimes we just know a tree, we won't be able to tease apart exactly what killed the tree and attribute it directly to fire. So it'll be more of, but we will be able to say if the trees that died in out years had a higher level of crown injury our bark char, what sorts of injuries they had compared to the ones that are still surviving. But I recognize that there will be a lot of noise around that, but it should give us a indication about how much additional mortality might occur and how long those snags will persist as well.
All right. She says, thank you. It's a useful way to tease apart relative influence of causes. So yeah, lots of great comments. I would ask all of the scientists to put your email contact in the chat box so that if anybody would like to contact you for some further information, or maybe they'll contact you on ways that you could collaborate with them. Yeah, thank you so much for putting those in. And we are certainly would love to hear from you if you have any ideas about future topics. I guess I do have one go back question for Morris. So I have been in a position working for the National Forest Systems where I have been on the active side of forest management and worked fires where I've seen, it's like, oh yeah, definitely need to do salvage, right? And then I've worked in other places and I've been like, ooh, I don't know, so I feel like I've been on both sides of the fences with that. Do you think that with the future of higher, fire severity that that pendulum is going to swing where more people are going to be supportive of active? What's your crystal ball say?
No.
No.
I think it's going to be the way it is now, because if you it just depends on who is in the media, right? I don't know if anything that comes across the news that says salvage logging, I get the newspaper article, and the most recent one has been, our famous scientist Jerry Franklin basically coming out and saying that we should not do any salvage logging. It does not improve ecological restoration. And so he says that in the context without understanding, what the forest managers' objectives are.
Right.
And, they have objectives, right? But he just said, okay, forget about their objectives. We don't care what they are. We shouldn't do any salvage logging. And so, so it just, so when you have articles like that and other folks out there, so yeah, I don't think the pendulum would never swing. So that's just my opinion.
Great. All right, last call. Any more questions? All right. Well, Gloria has put up our last slide for the afternoon, just to give you that final look of who you heard from today and some great links there. And hopefully you can grab those in the chat and we will be providing a recording. So thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon.
Yeah, all of the emails for all our panelists are included. And if you're interested in reaching out or you need any help or questions regarding any of the content or contacts, feel free to screenshot this or grab it from the recording when it's posted. All of the participating Fire Science Exchange websites are posted here, and as well as the Rocky Mountain Research Station. So thanks for attending. And we had some really great questions, really interesting discussion, and hope that we can do this again. Thank you very much.